Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lioness at the Door podcast. I'm Jackie Sorensen. I am a holistic health coach, and I'm here with Amy Rasmussen.
Welcome, everyone. We're happy to have you back with us. As you know, I'm Amy. I'm a teacher by profession, a wife and mother by choice, an optimist by nature, and happy by design.
And today we have had so many ideas about things that we want to visit about, but first and foremost, we'd like to talk a little bit about the idea of crashing and burning. We've all done it.
Inspiring.
Yeah. Oh, I think we all have a reference point there.
Yes. Well, and we got a little feedback, a few comments from last week. And one of the things that ladies said is, I really need to find a way to keep going after February, or I really need to set goals in June, or I need a March refresh. So everyone was in this idea of, I'm going to crash and burn, which means I'm going to need to have a reset. And then I also was talking to a good friend of mine who Monday came and kids were back in school and she had a plan and she woke up horribly sick. And it's so easy for something like that to hit us that we have no control over whatsoever. So it's not that we forgot. It's not that we didn't set goals. It's not that we got too busy and lost sight of our priorities. We just got sick. And it's really easy to feel that the first day you could have started what you planned, you have already crashed and burned. So that's just been rolling around in my mind. And I've been thinking about, where does that come from? That feeling of crashing and burning. And I think it comes partially from two things. It comes from expectation of what it should look like, not what it could look like, but what it should. Like there's this ideal. And I also think it comes from not leaving enough margin for ourselves as we strive to make change. So I want to jump into expectation for just a minute. And expectation, I think, is something, once again, we're all familiar with, that we have an expectation of we should hit 150% on every single thing we do in our lives. And so if we hit 90, we don't think it's awesome. And we might also know people who their baseline is 0%. So if they do anything, things are good.
Hurrah, yeah.
It's a little bit easier actually to live in that second one. But with expectation and with goals, I think we have this idea that we should be able to arise the Monday after New Year's, a new creature, ready to become whatever we wrote down on that paper, right? We are a phoenix, reborn from the ashes.
Yes.
But I think in human terms, that rebirth from the ashes takes a lot more time. We can't do everything all at once. We need a chance to clear away the bad, a tiny bit at a time. Whatever we say is bad, like for me, I might say, well, this, and we maybe don't want to use that word. Clear away the things that we'd like to get rid of while we add the things that we'd like to have. And I'd rather say that instead of bad and good. But we've got to clear away those things we don't want slowly as we add in the things we do want. Because if we try to do it all at once, we don't even have a foundation to stand on. We don't have the habits in place. We don't have all those things that we rely on to keep things going. So I think that's one of the really tricky things, is we expect to be able to do things all at once. We expect to be able to exert this grand effort, and then there will be trumpets and music and glorious light from above that shows what we have done.
May I interject a metaphor?
Absolutely, jump in.
So sometimes in health coaching, someone will have a goal that revolves around learning to eat better for whatever reason. And I've learned to give this caveat that you just said. When we change, we set about to change something that is that ingrained and that habitual and that emotional and that lifelong, generations of habits. That's what eating is, generations of habits. If we go too quickly, the crash and burn is inevitable. And so I always say, we're going to change one little tiny thing And by change, I mean, you're going to learn about it. We're going to think about how to apply the principle. And then we are going to figure out how to apply the principle in a really, really small way. So after I had that conversation with someone once, she went home and she pulled everything out of her pantry, everything, anything that might be on the junk list, and she filled it beautifully with whole grains, quinoa and sucanat and all the things.
Yeah.
And then she reported that they all went to McDonald's because there was nothing to eat.
Right.
Because I don't really know what to do with quinoa yet,
Yes.
And
I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Yes, and that was what the caveat was about.
Right.
We have to learn these little ways, little tiny ways. And we really do ourselves such a disservice when we want to leap buildings in a single bound. It doesn't serve us at all.
No.
We have to go little by little by little by little.
And I think that desire to leap is where we get our vision from. And vision's so important. We want the vision. But in order for the vision to become reality, we have to do these tiny, tiny things. And since you're talking about food, I think of last year and I decided, I like to say I play with things. So I was going to play a little bit with my food. Not physically,
Not
but in
literally.
my mind. I wanted to play with the ideas of what I was eating. And I wasn't going to do all the meals, especially not dinner. That's my whole family. And then they asked me what is on my plate. But I started with breakfast. And I started thinking, well, what are some breakfasts I like? How could I mix it up? So I tried a couple different things. Then I kind of decided I love having a breakfast skillet. I need protein in the morning. If I don't have protein, I get shaky. But then I played with that some more and I discovered I did not need to eat as much as I thought I needed to eat to feel full and satisfied and have smells be pleasant to me and be excited about eating it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was this process of discovering and of playing with different things and not feeling like someone said, this is what I should have for breakfast and I'm going to change forever now. And I still had days when I had my old breakfasts, the things that the kids want to make or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But my general breakfast is the one I finally discovered after several months of just playing and exploring with some things. So absolutely, we want the vision to be our bright, shining light. But the only way to get there and to make the vision reality is those tiny, tiny things.
Yeah.
Those little steps.
Yeah.
I think that part of what happens with this too is the fact that everything tends towards chaos. I believe that's actually one of those laws of physics. I should have asked someone or looked it up to get you the real law, but there's this idea that everything tends towards chaos. And sometimes we have this expectation that we are going to set things as they should be and they will remain.
Oh, please.
Or like the clean house. Or
Yes.
I have now taught my children how to plan and they will now plan. Or whatever it is. I think I have done it once and I want it to stay done. Well, the kinds of things that stay done for a certain period of time are things like I make my bed in the morning. And since I'm the only one who goes in my room most of the day, my bed stays made for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But even if I'm the only one home, I get in the bed at night. So it doesn't stay made forever. It does not stay made eternally. It tends towards chaos. And so what's exciting about that is that we are the ones who can create the order.
Yes.
And as we go through our lives, whether it's physical order or whether it's mental order or things emotionally, we get to come and we get to just create and create. And we get to know it's going to go like this. It is going to tend toward chaos. And we can just expect that and not be worried about it. But I've heard so many people feel like they have failed. They hit the crash and burn because things did not stay done. They were not able to stay consistent. The plan didn't work out. The thing that they've been doing for 3 months all of a sudden fell apart. And in my mind, I'm thinking, you did that for 3 months? That's fantastic.
Wow. Yeah.
Or 1 month or 1 week or whatever. A food example again, for the past 3 days, now count them, that's only 3. I have done some dinner prep in the morning because I know that dinner time is a really hard time of day for me. My husband and I joke that it is my daily breakdown. So I'll just text him sometimes. I feel like I'm gonna have a breakdown. And I use breakdown loosely. I actually don't have a breakdown, but I'm just like, oh, I've got to feed the kids. And so for several times that I did that, he texted me back, said, what happened? Like something big. I'm like, dinner came again.
Dinner.
He's like, yes, it did come again. It comes every day.
Funny how that happens.
I know. And we know this, and it's our joke now. And so it's almost like a code that he can just tell, like, okay, today's not going really well. I could just throw this thing together. And so it's become something funny that we can joke about. But it's also something that I would like to adjust so that it doesn't feel so stressful.
Yeah.
So I'm doing those things in the morning. But guess what? I'm not assuming that now for the rest of the year, I would successfully every single day create something in the morning. But it's happened for 3 days. And all 3 days that it has happened have felt really great in the evening.
Yeah.
So when I do fall off the wagon, I can remember how great it felt those 3 days and just step right back on rather than the crash and burn. Do you have any thoughts about that idea of things tending toward chaos?
Oh, heavens. Yes.
That you want to share?
But to speak to what you just said about remembering the feeling of how it worked. I recently was speaking with someone who had made a new goal of studying the scriptures. And at first, it had been so long since that had been a habit that this person wasn't even really remembering what the perks were.
Right.
But what was reported was that after a couple of weeks of having it be an everyday thing, now, if it doesn't happen, it feels wrong. There's something missing.
Right.
The strength is missing. The clarity is missing. The love is missing. So I think that is such a big deal to, as we're trying to set ourselves on new courses and into healthier habits. Part of the process is just challenging yourself to do it enough, like you did these 3 days, to gain some history with how it feels.
Right.
So that you can see what the difference is in your life. Oh, this is how it feels in my day when I did that 10 minutes of dinner prep in the morning. I put this stuff in the crock pot, how it felt to be smelling it in the house cooking all day long.
Right.
And how it felt to be able to be cognizant and present and calm when it was time to actually put it on the table. I love that. I loved that feeling. And granted, it hasn't been the habit, but now 3 days, it's worked.
Yep.
So I'm gaining this, it's like social evidence. I'm gaining this, or historical evidence. I now have this memory in my mind that I can say, that's how that feels.
Right. And that's what I want to feel, right? Sorry to cut you off.
And if I have to pick between the two, I really want to pick that calm one.
Yep.
Because really doing dinner in the morning, when your brain is firing on all cylinders and everyone's not home,
right,
and everyone's not hungry, the energy is completely different.
Right.
So you just kind of do it. You just kind of put it in the crock pot and you just kind of put the lid on, you turn it on, and then you go. And there's something also, the other feeling is the feeling that you have of being prepared.
Yep. And already accomplished, right?
Yeah.
You've already accomplished something. Really.
And not only something, but one of the most important things you could do in your family that day.
Right.
Period.
Because everyone has to eat.
And everyone feels loved by food.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. And in order to make the 3 days happen, I did have to do some other legwork. I needed to have a plan for what I needed to have in my home. Yep. And so I don't want to pretend that background stuff didn't happen. I did some meal planning. I got shopping done, right? And so that was the foundation, because then it's very easy to do in the morning. It's not so easy to do in the morning if the foundation's not there, because then I think, oh, I'll just make this. Oh, no, I won't. I don't have that. Or, oh, I'll just make that. Nope, not that either, right? So you've got to have that foundation. Right. In whatever it is, whether it's meal prep or something else, there's sometimes that foundation. I also was thinking about what I call slogging. that 2 weeks or whatever, the scripture study, that was the slogging through the beginning. It's the difficult part. And to just realize, this is our expectation again, to realize that it is okay for the beginning to feel a little hard or a lot hard, right? The beginning just can feel that way sometimes. And so we have to give it enough time to get past the slogging phase and then decide, right? Okay, now that I'm done slogging, it's set in kind of in my pattern. Now, how is it making me feel? Because sometimes we get a quick payoff, like I did this week with feeling like this is great, right? Dinner time's easier. But other times, like with the scripture study, it takes some time to get past the painful part. It's like with running. If you start trying to run a marathon, if you're training for a marathon, the beginning of that training, from the couch training for a marathon, that beginning, that's horrible. It's hard.
Yeah.
And it's the slogging. That's what I call it.
And then sometimes this brings to mind C.S. Lewis, being surprised by joy. The things that we choose to do in these moments, beginning of the year, we know what habits we want. We know what's good for us.
Right.
We do.
Right.
And sometimes when we start doing them, we are surprised at how delicious they are.
Yes.
Surprised that we just read that chapter in our scriptures and we feel joyful. We ran down the street and maybe it didn't feel like a slog. Maybe it was like the endorphins are pumping. I'm going to live forever feeling,
Right. Right.
So in our efforts, and even if maybe the slogging part for the run in the morning was actually getting out of bed and putting the clothes on.
Yes.
And maybe getting to the scriptures was, I actually had to go to bed a little bit earlier last night so that I could get up as early as I need to in order to nourish my soul.
Right.
Maybe that was the slogging part, but the actual feasting part, the actual reading, the actual running, maybe that's a joy right off the bat. Maybe that's a joy.
And it's so fun to have those surprising moments. And that, I don't know, it just lightens the load a little bit.
Yes.
So it makes me think of one other thing.
Yeah.
It makes me think of something that my son's cross country coach said at their end of year banquet last year. And he said, or no, maybe it was this fall, end of season, this fall is when he said it, I think. He said, you who have done cross country have learned that hard work becomes fun.
Amen.
And I love that because it does. And in my life, I've seen that principle over and over again, that hard work does become fun. And it actually, I don't even know that it's not hard anymore, but sometimes it gets to the point where exerting that effort also just fills you with joy, and it makes you feel alive, and it makes you feel like you're in that creative place of who you are, even though what you're doing is hard work.
Yeah.
So,
I love it.
Brilliance from a coach right there. Did you have one other thing you wanted to say?
There are a lot of things we could say.
I mean, because I have something else we can move on to, but I didn't want to miss.
Well, I think that, we could talk about sustainability. We could talk about the ways that we shoot ourselves in the foot because it has to be all or nothing. But I think what we've talked about is good.
Okay. Then I want to talk about the second thing. Is that all right?
Yeah.
The second thing was not leaving enough margin.
Oh, that's right.
Make our plan.
Yeah.
And there's a story that goes along with this. So years ago, I was reading the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which some of you might be familiar with. And in that book, the author, Stephen Covey, talks about an airplane being off course 90% of the time. And I talked to my mom about this story because his point was that the airplane is not exactly on the course all the time. In fact, it's generally off and it's having these little corrections, right? Bringing it back constantly. And it's those little corrections that make all the difference. So then I was talking to my mom about it, and she brought up some thoughts and questions. And then we realized we have someone in our family who flies airplanes. So I decided to call my uncle. And I called him. And I mean, he's been a pilot for years. He's retired now, but he was a pilot by profession. And I asked him about this. And he explained something that is even more meaningful to me than this idea of being off course 90% of the time.
Okay.
He said, in a flight plan, what you have to understand is that there is a margin of error. And I don't even know if he called it a margin of error, but he said you have your course, and then you have 4 miles on each side, 4 miles, not 4 inches, right? 4 miles on each side where you are still on course. That's like an 8-mile margin.
Mm-hmm.
Now for an airplane,
That's not much, right?
Right. That makes sense for an airplane. But still, as we think about this 8-mile margin, if we apply it to a car, which more of us are familiar with, there is some margin,
Yes.
right? There's
Yeah.
margin. It's not exactly the size of your vehicle to drive down a lane.
Yeah.
Or you do have, you have the edge of the road that has a name. What is it called? Anyway, thank you. The shoulder. Yeah, it's not coming. You have the shoulder, right? You're able to change lanes, but you have this margin. And what was amazing to me is that we can apply this to life, because so often, once again, we think we should just be on course. And then we have this idea that Cubby said is like, well, you're off course 90% of the time. But at least for me, that doesn't feel inspiring. I understand what he's trying to say.
Yes.
I love so much this idea of having an 8-mile margin.
I love that. That is way better for my brain. I think the 90% off course all the time is not necessarily well suited for a woman's brain.
That makes sense. Yes. Well, and oh, sorry, finish.
I was just going to say, we really value being on course.
Right. And so to realize that there is this large margin of us being on course feels like we can take another step and we can keep going.
And have the possibility of succeeding.
Exactly. Right. Because we have this margin. It's not that you are on this little tightrope, and if you just slip a little bit, you are not just going to hurt yourself, you are going to die, sister. You're right. I mean, it's like, it is
no net.
Right. No net. You're just done. And I think too often that is how we approach things. So just 2 things that I have found that allow me to create that margin as I'm making goals that I want to share are: first, I love to have some time where I can reflect on how it's going. And once again, a few years ago, I was reading something about the business world, and the person suggested having an offsite quarterly review to see how your business was going. And I thought, I am not in the business world, but I am doing that. And once a quarter, you go somewhere that's not in your house, and you bring whatever, like your little planner or journal or whatever, so that you can just review how life's going. Now let's talk about margin. Doing that every quarter sounds glorious to me.
Amen. Yeah.
It also doesn't always happen. But even when I have done it once a year, and I really do, I leave my home, I can't see anything that has to be done. I leave my home and I go somewhere, just me. I don't meet up with friends or anything. And I look at things. There's an amazing lightness to me because I can see where I'm at. I can gauge where I'm at, and it gives me a little bit of margin.
Right. You know that song Bette Midler sang, From a Distance?
Oh, yes.
That's what it is. That's what you're pulling back.
Yep.
When you said, I can't be anywhere where I can see what needs to be done. You have to get out of the minutia, right?
Yes.
Back up so you can see your life from a distance.
Yep.
It could be going to the park, or it could be going to another city and going to a hotel.
Right.
You're talking about, it could be on the mountain taking a hike and you stop and you pull your planner out of your backpack. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big complex thing, right? It's just some way for you to pull back and get some perspective.
Right. And that can even happen in a very small way. If you don't have a whole day, like it has been glorious when I've had a whole day. And the closer I am to doing it quarterly, the better I'm doing. Yeah. It feels better. I'm more in control all the time. But when I had little kids, that felt impossible, right? So even if you have an hour, even if you have half an hour, you can find a time, even if it's during someone's nap time, and you decide, okay, can I have someone be here in the house during the nap time and I just go outside the house? Or can I go sit in my car, right? Somewhere where you just can't see stuff. There, it's the opportunities are limitless. And then the second thing that I would say has helped me to have that margin is to remember that, first of all, like you said, we can't only have joy and happiness and peace if the house is a mess, but everyone's happy and joyful, right? We can have a clean house and have happiness and peace.
Yes, they're not mutually exclusive.
Right, they're not mutually exclusive.
One or the other. Yeah.
On the other hand, we can also have happiness and joy and peace when things are somewhat chaotic in the house. Because when you have little kids, you put something away and it gets taken out again, like instantly, right? That's why I love making my bed, because it stays made most of the time until I go to bed.
Yes,
unless my husband's home,
things that aren't,
then I have to work with that.
undone. Yeah.
Right. But just this idea that I can find joy during my learning, during the work I'm doing, during my exploring, and I can be okay with the fact, like I mentioned earlier, I think too, before we talked on here, before we recorded, I can be okay with the fact that I have a couple piles that I'm not touching in December because I'm not getting into cleaning. And this week I'm taking care of some of those piles. Now it's great if the piles never occurred in the first place, but with where I'm currently at, it was easier for me to say, I know those piles exist and they are going to exist. And in January, they have an appointment and they are so patient. They're infinitely patient. They just
piles are so patient.
Yes. And then I'm dealing with them as I'm kind of bringing things to where I want them to be to begin the year for January. So just realizing we can have that joy. We don't have to wait for the joy until our house is clean. And I think I've heard too often people say, well, you can't have peace and joy in a messy home. I heartily disagree. You can, but you can also have it in a clean home. And you can also have it when you're right in the middle trying to figure out how to have the organized home, because you know it will bring you joy, but to do it in a way that also brings your family joy instead of yelling mom all the time about stuff on the ground. So that's my other thing that helps me have that margin, is just, I guess, giving myself a margin for the joy in the process, rather than waiting to have joy when I've arrived at some crazy expectation that might not even be realistic.
Yeah. I like the back to the car and the airplane, envisioning our goal as the car going right down the middle of the road. And I mean, there's no need to go exactly down the middle of the road, except you know that you're not going to hit anybody else. And you know, whatever,
safety.
Right. Yeah. But thinking of that margin as you've got so much room to the dotted center line, you've got so much room to the line that's on the shoulder. And within those parameters, you are still driving forward.
Yep.
And I think that is a really nice visual for, yep, today I got dinner ready in the morning and that felt really good. And then the next day, whoa, something tripped in that schedule. Right. And that's okay. It didn't. So I figured out something very simple and nutritious to do. We had dinner. Next day, I'm back in making my dinner in the morning, and just giving ourselves that grace on either side. And not, sometimes we just want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We just want to say, well, that goal didn't work. I'm done. Yeah. But we don't even have to say that. No. You can just say, here I am within the lines. Yeah. Driving within the lines, but there's a lot of room in there.
Yes. And maybe you just hit a rumble strip, right? Yeah. I think that's what happens is we hit that rumble strip. We're like, oh, wait. And too often we're like, no, I already died in a horrible car crash. But instead we just hit a rumble strip, or we just came up to a semi that is going 2 miles an hour up the hill. And so we have to go around that and then get back in our lane. Yeah. So it's helpful to visualize it that way, because it makes sense when we drive and it can make a lot of sense when we live. Yeah. So
amen.
Anyway.
Well, I love those thoughts, Amy. I think those are really, really good ideas.
Well,
It's
thank you for exploring them with me.
helped me. I will be thinking about driving
Oh,
today.
good. I'm going to be thinking about rumble strips. Like, okay, is this a rumble strip moment? Is this
Uh-huh.
trying to tell me something? Because those rumble strips are so loud, right?
Yeah, they are, but
Really
it's
got
not
your
a
attention.
crash. It's
Right.
not a crash. Yeah.
They're helpful. They're good, right?
Yeah.
So we can start thinking of those rumble strips in our lives as like, thank you, rumble strip.
Yes.
I will course correct now.
Right. Oh, I love it.
That's
Well,
fantastic.
everyone, we wish you a wonderful day today and hope that you'll have a lot of love and light and hope and feel really optimistic about this time of year and about your life.
Agreed. And don't worry about the crash and burn because you've got this. You've got this.
Okay, everybody, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So Jackie, you've told us over the past few weeks about the exciting things you have starting tomorrow because we're recording on Wednesday. So if you're listening the day we recorded, it's tomorrow, Thursday. But will you just tell us one more time so that if anyone wants to squeak in at the last moment, they can? What is starting tomorrow?
Yes, absolutely. Yesterday I was editing a class recording and I heard someone say, I just barely got here because I just saw your post yesterday that said last call for class.
Yes.
And it was like, I've seen it go by me 4 or 5 times, but this was last call. And she said, I just knew that I looked over the things you were covering in the class and they were the exact things that I need. And so she jumped on. So thanks for the question. Yes, we are starting new Lioness classes tomorrow. And along with that, we are also offering, and we're just on the cusp of pushing the button to say it's available, like in the next, it's a matter of hours.
Oh, so
Now,
fun.
where we're offering Lioness classes in a digital version, and then you can do digital version plus the coaching. So the group coaching component. So you can do it on your own if that floats your boat, if that is how you work best. And you know that you can buy a program and you can listen to the videos and you can watch the class and you can go through the assignments and you're just one of those people that can hold yourself accountable and move through things. That is wonderful. And it will be at a very beautiful low price point, and you can do that all by yourself, or you can opt to have the coaching component with it. And that's for people who really want the sociality and they really want the accountability, and they know that maybe they've purchased a program before and they were really gung-ho about it for a week and then didn't pick it up again. So if you're one of those people that really would like to, you know you want to do it, you know you want the growth, but you also know yourself, and maybe if you're like me, there might be distractibility happening. So it's just however you roll and what would serve you best. We now have these options, and I'm so
exciting.
So excited.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to share in answer to your question is that we are also starting a Lioness lifestyle subscription. And this is for those of you who have either been a coaching client at Lioness and you just want to stay in your pattern. You want to stay in the new self-care habits that you have, and you want to keep doing your declarations. You want to keep your unconditional love skills moving. You want to keep validating. You want to keep all the healthy things that are going. Or if you've taken a class and you've learned things and you want to keep up on those, or if you haven't been a client at Lioness and you just want to start somewhere really small. Mm-hmm. You just want a couple of assignments and you just want to work on them at your own leisure, through a month. So each month you'll get a new lesson, challenges, assignments, if you would, depending on what makes you feel better. It's an assignment or a challenge. And some information to look through to be inspiring or to teach. And then when you accomplish those things, you finish those things for the month, you will receive a tradition tracker. And it's a beautiful sheet for each month that helps you to plan traditions for your family. I'm so excited for you to have those. At the end of the year, you'll have all 12 months. You can put them in your home management binder. You can put them in beautiful plastic sleeves. You can have a family meeting or a family party, and you can brainstorm and fill in all the prompts. These are the things we want to do in February. These are the things we want to eat. This is the fun thing that we want to make sure that we do every year because everybody loves it. And then you have the record, you have the plan, it's already there in your home management binder. So it's a win-win. You get the benefit of doing the goals, the growth, and then you get the little reward at the end.
That is fun. So it sounds like you've got the 2 full classes that can be signed up for until tonight, right? Because they start tomorrow. You have things kicking off that are a little more go at your own pace that we should see hopefully within hours. And then you have the lifestyle coming up subscription,
Right.
that can be on a month-to-month basis. It can kind of help you through the whole year, but at a little more smaller steps.
Yes, smaller.
So many options.
Yeah.
So whatever works for you. And if at this time none of those work for you, just keep joining us on our podcast.
Yes.
And we'll keep walking with you.
Yep. It'll be great. So thanks for being with us. We'll see you
Thanks.
soon.
Bye.